Beating the odds, amidst the snow-capped Himalayas is unveiled a place of pristine heavenly beauty that is none other than Kashmir. The reason why this place intrigues me so much is, just as the spectacular beauty it showcases in its lush green valleys, glaciers, and Mogalera gardens, so are the zeal and spirit of its residents. They have a burning desire to achieve the unfathomable. One such girl was Tara, who hailed from Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir. A 23-year-old, smart and sensible with a good sense of humor, was the darling of her parents. As she was born to them at a relatively older age, they pampered her and made sure she never had complaints. So, she was homeschooled and then went on to complete her bachelor's and master's from a prestigious university in Kashmir. So in a literal sense, life in a nutshell, to Tara just meant home and university. All through her teenage years, Tara watched the neighborhood kids and university classmates indulge in fun and frolic. She had all the luxuries that she dreamt of. But soon she realized materialistic things could only get her momentary pleasure. Since then, every dusk and dawn, her parents would find her sitting quietly by the window, deeply lost in thoughts. Day by day, her parents grew more concerned about her this behavior. Nobody knew how much Tara longed for a chance to go out and explore the world on her own. That's when she received an offer letter to work for a world-famous software company in Mumbai. She was thrilled on seeing this. Her parents were both happy and distressed at the same time. Happy because they hadn't seen their daughter so cheerful in a long while, and sad as they knew she would be going miles away from them. And so the day had come when she was leaving her house for the first time with lots of goals to accomplish. She took her parents' blessings and bid them farewell before boarding the flight. Her next destination was the city of dreams, Mumbai. Tara still couldn't believe that she had started a new chapter of her life as she gazed at those tall skyscrapers. The Queen's Necklace, the Marine Drive, fascinated her the most while viewing from the plane. She didn't want to miss out on anything this time. Although the next few months were hectic for her as she hustled between home and office, she did make sure to take out some time on weekends to hang out with colleagues or do solo travel. She was enjoying life to the fullest and her parents were contented. Time flew and Tara was transforming into a true Mumbaiker. Everything was going smoothly except for one night. At around 9 p.m., just when Tara got back from the office all exhausted, she suddenly felt a sharp, cramping pain in her lower back and left side. She had never experienced such sort of terrible pain before. She used to stay all by herself in a 1 BHK apartment. Hence there was nobody to help her. Neither did she have any emergency medicines in hand. She suddenly collapsed onto the floor but was still conscious. She felt suffocated and started gasping. It was that time of the year when the bitter cold would force you to stay indoors, and that's when Tara had to go through all this. She suddenly remembered her parents and started weeping. The clock struck 10 and there were still no signs of the pain reducing. Tara lay there sobbing in pain for nearly 2 hours, rolling to and fro on her carpet. Suddenly, in that silence, her phone buzzed displaying a new message, but what caught her attention was the wallpaper and not the message. It said in big words, "The pain, it will leave once it has finished teaching you." She didn't know exactly why she had to go through so much suffering alone. But now she accepted this as a challenge and decided to get rid of it, come what may. She didn't want to be a burden to anybody so late in the night. Hence, she mustered up the courage and rose to her feet, grabbed her trench coat, and walked out of her building, her head held high. Chilly winds were blowing at the speed of 39 to 46 miles per hour. There was not a soul on the streets, and there was Tara, struggling to walk against these strong gushing winds, desperately in search of a clinic or hospital. Despite the temperature being awfully low that night, the chilly breeze gave some relief to the burning pain that she felt down her spine. A few cars passed, but sadly none stopped by to offer help. This gave her all the more willpower to fight this alone. Soon after she had crossed 2 lanes and headed for the third, she spotted a gentleman stepping out of his clinic and locking the front door. Her heart knew no bounds. Suddenly, all her grief just seemed to disappear. She somehow managed to reach that spot, and the doctor at once knew what she was suffering from. So he took her inside, gave her a shot of Dexona to relieve the spasms, and advised her to get an ultrasound done the very next morning. He was all praises for her, as he couldn't believe she made
generations. My father was a racist. Not the kind that truly hated minorities or burned crosses in people's yards, but the kind that, out of ignorance, would say insensitive and dismissive things. It was not really his fault. He was simply a product of his time. Out of fear or out of habit, I'm not sure which, he isolated himself within our mostly white, upper-middle-class community of God-fearing Christians. In order to isolate his children, he sent us to Catholic schools. He once said to me that he did so because at public schools we would be exposed to people of other faiths and that could get confusing. When I questioned his meaning, he explained that if I ever befriended or, dated someone of another faith or ethnicity, it would be difficult. He said that while they are not inherently bad people, the differences would be too great and I would never really understand them. And so I spent my youth in near-perfect isolation. Until I was in my late teens, I had only met a handful of people who were black or brown or yellow, as they were called. I had only met one Jew and I was honestly afraid of her. Based solely on that difference. I remember studying her face whenever she was looking away, trying to see what my father had warned me about. I had my guard up so as not to be confused by this exposure. Time passed and nothing bad ever happened. I had also never encountered a real-life gay person until my 20s. They were not portrayed in entertainment back then, so the idea was a fuzzy, almost mythological concept to me. I knew that my religious leaders looked on it as a sin. I myself found there was nothing wrong with them, but viewed it more as a mutation. Not normal, but not their fault. I once said I considered it wrong not morally, but much like saying 2 + 2 = 5 is wrong. But I, too, was a product of my time. Children in my elementary school would use the term gay as an insult. I remember a girl in my class asking me once to touch her hair. She was not sure if she had used too much conditioner and wanted me to tell her. I refused. I didn't want anyone to see me caress her hair and think I was a lesbian. I even feared she was only asking me in order to set me up for people to think that kids could be cruel and it was a prank that was all too possible. I like to think I have changed. I spent years living in Ottawa and then Montreal, where I met and befriended people of many faiths and colors and even sexual orientations. They seemed no different than the people I grew up with. Some kind, some cruel, some smart, some foolish. There was the same mix of personality traits among them as I had encountered in my youth, and I soon realized that my father's fears were unfounded. I believe I was kind and tolerant of all the differences I encountered. Thinking back on it now, though, I was still quite ignorant. I still told the occasional off-color joke, just as most of my peers did. We were all products of our time. My husband and I were once given free tickets to a movie screening. Excited for the experience, we lined up, got our popcorn and drinks and sat in the center of the theater to enjoy the show, not even knowing what we were about to see. As it turns out, it was a movie highlighting the trials and hardships of blacks in a low-income, crime-riddled community. The cast was almost entirely black. We enjoyed the movie, and found it well done and entertaining, but we also started noticing that we were the only white people in the audience. I am ashamed to say I felt a twinge of fear. We thought we might be harassed or attacked on our way out because we didn't belong. We felt out of place. I wonder now, what the other movie-goers thought of us. Were they happy that 2 white people had come out to support this film? Did they think we were there to criticize? Or that we had, perhaps, wandered in by accident? I'll never know because we hightailed it out of there the second the credits were rolling. But who could blame us? Interracial violence was on the rise. We were still products of our time. Several years later, I took my young daughter to an outdoor festival with a friend and her daughter. This friend of mine purchased a framed print of 2 women kissing. She carried this with us around the festival, and I was tolerant because I had no problem with the fact that my friend was bisexual. However, at one point, she needed to go take her child to the bathroom and she left me in charge of this large framed picture. I sat near a wall with my daughter and waited. I turned the photo to the wall so that nobody would think it was mine. I like to think that I have done better than my father, not perfect, but better. And for years I thought that was good enough. Today, I realize that it wasn't. Today I am filled with awe and admiration for my daughter, a beautiful young adult who has taken the meager teachings of her parents that tolerance and kindness are enough, and gone so much far.